Hey athletes, I'm Haley Herdman, former D1 basketball player, mental health therapist, and mental performance coach for athletes.
And I'm Naomi M., also former D1 basketball player, athlete mentor, and mental health advocate.
And we are the hosts of Mental Training Room. This is the space where athletes get real about the mental side of sport.
Whether you're on the court, field, or just figuring it all out, we've been there.
And we're bringing you the conversations we wish we had as athletes in hopes to help you become mentally elite.
Let's train the mind like we train the body. Welcome to the Mental Training Room.
Today in the Mental Training Room, we have JD DuBois. JD DuBois began his basketball journey as a standout college athlete at Loyola Marymount University, Go Lions, where he played Division I basketball. He transferred to Utah for grad school and finished his career off here. After college, he took his talents overseas, playing professionally in Europe and gaining firsthand experience of the mental and physical demands athletes face at the highest levels. Following his pro playing career, JD transitioned into coaching, joining the ranks of the NBA as an assistant coach for teams like the Los Angeles Lakers, Toronto Raptors, and Detroit Pistons. JD earned his master's in sport and performance psychology and is now pursuing his PhD. His coaching philosophy was expanded beyond X's and O's to a more holistic approach, one that centers the full human experience of an athlete. He's also the founder of Holistic Coaches, a platform committed to building mental resilience in athletes, and the author of the new book, Thru Chaos, a guide designed to help athletes, leaders, and creatives find clarity and purpose under pressure. Well, welcome to the Mental Training Room, JD. We're so excited to have you here. Fellow LMU alums, all here. Go Lions. I'm so excited to talk with you today because I feel like you mix two of our passions very well: mental health, sports psychology, and basketball. So I'm really excited to kind of pick your brain and learn more about the work that you do. And especially as a professional, like in the sports psychology world, I'm always interested in learning about how colleagues like yourself get involved with this work. What kind of like sparked your passion for sports psychology, and did it play a role in your active playing career at all?
Yeah, so to start, I just want to say what you guys are doing is amazing.
Thank
It's
you.
something that I wish that myself and my teammates had when we were in school, of individuals
Same.
who were in our pews, who are having these conversations, who are bringing people on that are either experts now or engaging in education. So I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing, and I'm happy to be here. In terms of the question, I kind of forgot, but how did I get engaged in
Yes.
psychology, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, it really, if I had to go back, it started really in mostly just like the mental health part, even for me as a young athlete. So, like you mentioned, we're all graduates of LMU. Came to LMU as a freshman, went to high school about 10 minutes down the road at Westchester High. But unfortunately, at a young age, I had to deal with a lot of grief and loss with just friends that were dying to gun violence. And so my first engagement was just the mental health, post-traumatic stress. At this point, when I first got to LMU, I was really having trouble sleeping because all I could really hear were literally the screams and the cries, the individuals at the different funerals I had to go to. And so battling all of that with this new university and trying to play Division I basketball, and so seeking help in that area led me to, okay, what about this can I transition into my basketball career, and how can I maximize my potential as an athlete? Because obviously, as you know, the deep-rooted mental health is one side, and then the kind of sports psychology, mental skills is another component. And that was really where it started. And then I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Michael Gervais. He came and actually spoke with our team at LMU.
Oh,
And
that's
so
awesome.
being able to do, I think we did 2 days. One day he came to LMU, and then the next time we saw him was before the conference tournament. And so being able to do visualization and just be introduced to this kind of broader mental skills environment was really where it started. And then I used it as a player. I don't think that I was any special physically gifted athlete, but if you ask anybody I played with or against from a mental toughness, sharpness standpoint, I think that was my biggest skill set that then allowed me to play in college, play professionally, and then now coach professionally as well.
Yeah. That's extremely awesome. I love Dr. Michael Gervais. I actually had the opportunity to kind of like shadow a talk that he did like a couple months ago at this thing called Elite 11. It's like for quarterbacks, like the highest. Yeah, it's like they're like a group of high school quarterbacks that are like the best in the country. and they all come here, and actually they practice at my old high school. So I had the chance to shadow the work that he was doing and love his podcast, love his work. So that's so awesome that you actually got to experience that like as a player.
And even at that time, Dr. Lang, who was working with the team, he
Okay.
brought him in. And so
Mm,
having someone who is more of our kind of like team doctor be
yeah.
aware 15, 20 years ago that, hey, this mental performance person is good. So all of those things coming full circle was really powerful for me at such a young age. And I'm sure your experience even recently was just as powerful as well.
Yeah. And it's different, like learning from him now as an actual clinician versus being able to experience his work as an athlete. I wish I was able to have that and was like more into it when I was playing. But either way, that's still really amazing that you had that experience and being, obviously it was impactful for you because you wanted to make a career out of it. The experience that you had with like PTSD and the traumatic experiences you had as a high schooler, how do you feel like that affected your game or the way that you kind of approached basketball? Because again, I feel like I've said this many times, but the reason why I went the marriage and family therapy route is to kind of bring in that like holistic part of an athlete to the therapeutic space and not just kind of focusing on specifically just performance or like the sport, but understanding that the athlete has a lot of other things going on. For example, PTSD, for example, gun violence, whatever it might be. So how do you feel like that kind of affected the way that you showed up as an athlete or just as a human in general?
Yeah, I think one, that's an unbelievable question. And I think a question that we should all be kind of looking at. And
Yeah.
I'll dive into it a little bit. But I think if I had to pinpoint how it impacted me, I think it's kind of two prongs. I think part of it is it allowed me to learn more about myself
Mm,
because of these traumatic events. And I want to differentiate causation and correlation. My love for psychology, my resilience, my ability to kind of get through those things was not caused by those traumatic events. They just happen to be correlated. So I think too often times we like to say my tough upbringing and me having these things happen to my friends in these environments caused me to become resilient and mentally tough. It's like, no, you as the individual showing up every day, your family and friends supporting you, the environments that you were in that put their arms around you and told you that you were enough and that you can still be something, those things caused you to be mentally tough and resilient. The traumatic events are simply correlated to you becoming successful. And I think that's a huge component for us as adults, young people, anybody to recognize. And I know a lot of times people that are successful unknowingly put causation to those traumatic events, and that's not the case. The individual, you showing up every day cause you to become mentally tough, not some uncontrollable traumatic event. And I would say that that's what I connect to it the most is just the eliciting of awareness of what impacts me from a day-to-day standpoint. I'll give you an example. I remember my first year with the Pistons, we had a practice facility in Auburn Hills. There was a team or organizational meeting room called, I think it was called the Bubble or something of that sort, where it was just a glass room where we had all of our meetings. And over the first couple of months, every time before the meeting started, I would get like anxious. And I'm not naturally an overly anxious person. I'm not naturally like nervous about talking or whatever the case may be. And I found myself literally waiting outside of the bubble until like a minute before the meeting, then I would just go inside. Well, again, the individual intentionally doing the inner work, therapy, having these conversations, it goes back to being 9 years old, being inside of a Burger King with my dad, and there's the bulletproof glass. So same type of glass as this room, and my dad being held at gunpoint. And so at 27, I'm in a professional space. I'm a coach, and I have this nervousness about like anytime we go in those rooms, we're meeting with the president, the GM, the head coach. And so this is an important space, but I'm struggling because of something that happened 20 years ago. And that's an example of how I wouldn't say that that experience caused me to now be so mentally tough. It's like, no, the individuals who I was able to talk through those things allowed me to move forward. So that's just one example where I think the importance of what you're saying is being able to understand that the mental skill part of it is psychological reframe, breath work, and staying present. But the more mental health, deep rooted thing is understanding that, hey, this is a traumatic event that happened, recognizing that in this current day, you're safe. So I would say that that's a very acute example of something that I really experienced in a place where you don't want to be going into an important meeting feeling like that and not knowing, like, dang, why am I? Every time we're doing something that's important to the job, and as you know, as a young professional, you never want to be the person that's a minute coming into a meeting a minute before it starts. But I just had this like, whoa. So no, that was definitely an example for me.
Were you able to, in that moment, understand why that was happening, or did you have to like kind of do like the therapeutic work to connect the dots?
Yeah, so a lot of the talk therapy, and I'll shout out to Dr. Corey Yeager. We're just talking about like, okay, what are some of the connections? Like, all right, is it the glass? Talk me through what moments, because if we're meeting another room, I don't have these problems. If it's on Zoom, if it's in person on the court, there's no struggle. But this particular glass bubble, it's like, okay, the glass. All right, does clear glass have any relation to any other? And it's like, well, I guess, and it's interesting as humans, over time, we kind of can tuck things away, or we don't even identify them as that impactful because it's like, oh, that happened however many months ago or years ago. And it's like, no, there's a pretty direct correlation. The only time that I can remember glass impacted my life was at 9 years old with a gun to my dad's head. Like, that's going to impact you. I don't care who you think you are or how tough. That's going to impact you over time. And so having that talk therapy, those different conversations definitely helped me kind of bring to the surface the root cause of that nervousness.
Yeah.
I feel like everything you explained, I wish I was able to hear those connections when I was in college, because now that I go through EMDR therapy, I am able to separate those experiences and understand, okay, this is the trauma that's over here, but it's connecting in these ways. And learning how to separate those two is what I've experienced at my age now. But in college, we could attest, I was just a hot mess. I wasn't able to connect why this was triggering me and that was triggering me. And all my triggers were placed on my coach or exterior factors besides myself. And that's something that I wish I was able to have those skills to separate those two in college. But I mean, that's kind of why we're doing what we do now. But
yeah.
And to me, that's why you guys' work and our work is so important. Is clinicians are important, of course, but being able to have clinicians and mental performance coaches who have also been in the locker room and been in those positions of real life is happening, but my coach is also doing this, and my teammate who I'm better than, but I'm not playing, and I'm injured, and I'm trying to get back, and they're telling me that I'm ready, but I know I'm not, but I got to play because I need my scholarship. Like, we've all either experienced it or seen it literally firsthand. And so being able to have those evidence-based modalities along with, hey, we can all reference, I remember my freshman year of high school, or I remember my junior year of college. This is what happened in real life. And now the research supports that A, B, and C can help you get through those.
Yeah. And the last thing kind of on this trauma topic of the reason why I'm so interested in what you're saying right now is because the work I do right now as a therapist, I work with adults who have been formerly incarcerated. So there's a lot of trauma within that population, a lot stemming from childhood, as you mentioned, JD, of traumatic experiences that in the moment, people might not be able to label it as trauma or even label it as this is unhealthy. I mean, obviously it sounds like for you, like having your father being held at gunpoint is like, that's a pinpoint memory. Like that is something that's not constantly reinforced. But for other people of like, whether it's like abuse from parents or other family members or just witnessing like domestic violence, whatever it might be, that trauma in the moment teaches them that their environment is unsafe, and they develop these tactics in the moment to kind of disconnect or disassociate. And it affects that like mind-body connection. So it's like then they, even when the trauma has left, those kind of like the coping skills that they developed in the moment, whether healthy or not, they stick with them. And it comes out in different ways in their adult life. And so much of my work now is trying to go back and literally what you said of like, sometimes I feel like I sound so silly saying like, okay, let's practice these affirmations of telling yourself you are safe. But it is so true because it's training your brain and it's training your nervous system to believe that you are safe now. Because although, you know, your body, one of my favorite books is like Your Body Keeps the Score about trauma and just like those long lasting effects. But your body might be keeping the score, but the environment that you're in might not be the same. So really learning to be present and bringing in that like mindfulness to it. And then adding that on top of if you're an athlete or if you're a professional, like you said, making sure that the effects of trauma aren't bleeding over into other areas of your life. Also, like Nay said, of like, okay, this trauma is coming up and I'm taking it out on my coach and it's making me maybe look bad or get in trouble or whatever it might be. But that's why it's so important to have that awareness and to be able to process it and do that self-discovery to create that connection with yourself. Right. So thank you for bringing that up because that is a very important part of human beings in general.
And to your point, the last example I'll give is I remember, I think my second year coaching in Detroit, a player that this was his second year with the team, and now we have a good relationship. And he talked about, he was like, man, when we first met, I was kind of thrown off by you. I'm like, what you mean? He was like, you really wasn't trying to shake my hand. And I was like, really? I'm like, I never thought about the fact that I don't really like to engage in handshaking. Now, when I look back on my childhood, I grew up in LA, Inglewood area, very gang infested environment where every gang affiliate has a handshake. So because I'm not gang affiliated, I was never doing any handshaking. And so as I've gotten older, it's like we all know general public shaking hands is a normal part of just the day-to-day life. But if you grow up in an environment for 10, 15, 20 years where for the most part, the only people that are shaking hands to a certain extent are individuals that are associated with each other from a gang standpoint. And having that conversation with them in the moment, I realized like, dang, okay, there's probably a bunch of other areas that us as humans, we don't even recognize are bleeding out in our day-to-day habits as adults.
Literally.
Nothing to do with anything that we've consciously decide. It's all just like subconscious behavior. But to your point, it's like you can, if your body, and the beauty of our body is that it will protect us and move and adapt however you want it. So if your body can put you in this place of behavior, you can work to get yourself out of it. If you can learn behavior one way, you can learn behavior in the other way. So I thought that was another example as an adult of things that you just naturally do just off of a traumatic, like, man, I don't want to, nobody thinking I'm a part of nothing. But yeah, just interesting to dive into those topics that are really the root cause of a lot of our struggles. And too often we just want to kind of cut the dandelions. We want to stay at that surface level, but you can't always do that.
Yeah. I love this topic so much. We could go into it for hours, but I kind of want to get back on track to the sports psychology work and everything that you're doing. And before we got into talking about this trauma and how kind of trauma shows up in our lives, you mentioned a lot about mental toughness. And I know there's a lot of different definitions and like stigma attached to mental toughness. Hey athletes, it's Haley Herdman, host of Mental Training Room. Also, mental performance coach and mental health therapist. If you're listening to this, I know you're putting the work into your physical game. But what are you doing for your mental game? That's where I come in. I work with athletes, teams, and parents to build confidence, handle pressure, and develop the mindset it takes to perform at your best and be considered mentally elite. Whether it's through one-on-one coaching, team sessions, or parent workshops, I'm here to help you train the mind like you train your body. Want to work together? Reach out on Instagram at mtr.pod or visit haleyherdman.com to get started. So I want to ask you, what does mental toughness mean to you and the work that you do?
Yeah, I love that question. For me, I feel mental toughness is your trained capacity to remain grounded in your identity and who you are, but particularly in those moments of adversity and those moments of challenge. Like too often we only correlate pain tolerance with mental toughness. It's like, okay, pain tolerance is a component to mental toughness, but can you stay rooted and grounded in who you are? And the reason I say trained capacity is because I don't feel that there's like this innate magic dust that was put on certain people to be mentally tough versus others. You can develop the ability to be gritty. So for me, two examples that I think really fit that mold that I even talk about in the book is Russell Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard. So regardless of what the media says, regardless of what people say about Russ, he's always been rooted in his identities and his values as a person. And he's always been able to remain rooted in those things when adversity strikes. So he doesn't change. Adversity doesn't show up and now he's starting to be a whole nother person. He's not grounded in any of the identity and the values and the purpose that he had when things was going well. No, his purpose, his values, they stay the same regardless of what's happening. And same with Kawhi. It doesn't matter how many injuries he's faced throughout his career, his identity of who he is, his purpose, all of those things he remains rooted in regardless of what external factors. And I think that that's true mental toughness. And we can continue to develop that in our athletes as opposed to thinking that there's only this select group that has this predisposed gene to be mentally tough.
That is so good.
So good. That's my favorite definition of mental toughness I've ever heard.
Okay,
Ever.
come on now.
Because I feel like it's, like you said, people think of it as the pain tolerance.
Yeah.
And it's so much more than that. It takes, especially if you're talking about athletes, it takes a certain type of mental toughness to show up every day. I heard Kelsey Plum in an interview with like Overtime Women's Basketball the other day saying it's kind of boring to be a professional athlete because you have to show up every day and do the same thing every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that requires mental toughness.
Yes.
And it's about mastering that mental side. And I know you talk about this in the book as well of like, it's not just pure talent, but it's mastering the mental side. What within like that topic of mental toughness, why is it so important to focus on the mental side of the game? You know, if you want to take your career far rather than just focusing on, you know, the talent side of things.
Yeah. Now, I'm gonna ask you, put you on the spot.
Yeah.
It's a pretty simple question. But
Yeah.
how do you feel most people separate if you say what percentage of the game is physical versus what percentage of the game is mental? What's like the general answer most make?
50-50, 80-20.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, from my I mean, the general public, if we're talking like fans, like I would say they don't think it's mental at all. But for me, I know it's like 90-10.
And the reason I asked that,
mental.
I feel like in the sports world, there's always been this, oh, the game is 90% mental, is 10% physical. Like we just say that, or 80-20, even 50-50. We say that so freely. But when I follow up and say, well, okay, that's cool. How much time do you spend on the thing that you say is 80%, 90%, even 50%? And that answer is usually at best 5%, maybe 2%. And so if we just stop people right there and say, all right, hold on. We say it's 90% mental, 10% physical. We always say the gap between those that make it and those don't is mental toughness. We always say the great ones, they all have mental toughness. We're all saying this thing in our language, but nobody is taking any intentional, actionable steps to seek out anybody who has the capacity to teach you said mental skills. The scale is not making sense.
It's not.
You're saying this weighs 90 pounds and I'm looking and it says 0, 0, 0, 0. So for me, it was being able to say, okay, as a player, I felt that I was able to maximize my potential, mostly because I poured into my mental skill set. Did I develop physically? Of course. All right, the players that I watched growing up, the DeMar DeRozans, the Drew Holidays, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, did they have this unbelievable talent disposition? Like, kinda, but they were all elite mentally. Their discipline was elite. And now, hundreds of $1 million Hall of Fame career is a byproduct of those mental skills. So for me as a coach, I just felt if I know that that's the gap and I know that that's the separator, why wouldn't I be intentional about being an expert in the separator that everyone identifies? And that really put me on my journey for my master's. And then working with the Lakers was such an amazing experience because not only was I doing my master's program, but I'm coaching for one of the most pressure-filled or the perceived pressure-filled organization in all of sports. And so while I'm able to take a class on psychology of injury and an assignment is due on Sunday, Monday morning, I'm going to the facility and it so happened that one of the players I was working with was injured. And so while I'm researching, all right, how does visualization impact return to play? How does mental reframe impact? How does acceptance, commitment therapy, influence. I'm doing that at home, and then I come into work the next day and able to implement those at the highest level. And that really was honestly a little bit addicting of seeing how much you can make a difference being somewhat of an expert in that space. And that's why I was like, you know what? Let me get the PhD. I think it will help me as a person, whether it's working with different assistants, helping the head coach, but ultimately just being able to impact the game in a manner that is a little innovative. And I haven't necessarily seen anyone do it this route.
I have a question, and I wrote it on a Post-it so I don't. But with you saying like your transition into being a coach at the Lakers facility, not just at that high level, but at a college level, at a high school level, what do you feel like is the responsibility as a coach to understand this type of topic? Or, like you said, the trauma that you had. I mean, when me and Haley watch kids now, it's like I know they're going through something deeper than just being frustrated on the court. And I feel like that is the duty in some space, in some capacity, especially at a college level, because a lot of these athletes don't have their parents there, or their parents may not know about mental health like my parents didn't. And
Yeah.
so, what do you feel like is kind of a coach's role to play in mental toughness? Or,
Yeah. So just kind of two parts. One,
yeah,
I gotta figure out the exact definition, but a coach, we're basically a guide. We're
right.
guiding individuals to the destination that they would like, which is ultimately either being maximizing themselves athletically or just being a better person. And for me, the reason we started Holistic Coaches was because we felt that there was like a missing intentionality to developing the whole person. So the four tenets of holistic coaching is collaboration, flexibility, intentionality, and mindful. The fourth one, mindful, is kind of what you're speaking of. And for me, when you're a coach, the athletes are spending more time with you than they are their parents sometimes, because they're in school, they're in practice, they do homework, they go to sleep. On the weekends, they're playing games and they're with you. And the responsibility to have young people in literally the future of our world, we have to take ownership and intentional approach to figuring out, all right, let's identify what are the rate limiters or what are the struggles with said individuals. Well, we already established that the game is 90% mental, 10% physical. Even if we don't agree with that, it's definitely more than zero. And so we know that this is not only a skill set that will help them as athletes, but I don't care what you do in life, you're going to need resilience in order to live the life that you want. I don't care where you work, how much money you start off making. The mental skills, the psychological flexibility that's necessary to be an elite athlete are literally the same skills that allow you to be an elite lawyer, elite therapist, school teacher, whatever you decide to do. So I think the start of it is just reframing the responsibility. Obviously, winning is important. Obviously, developing the tactical or technical skill sets is important, but we're literally guiding the future of society. And with that comes a deeper responsibility.
And I think to that point too of like like you said, even if you don't agree it's a 90-10, I would hope people who know sport know that it's at least more than 0%.
Yeah.
And if we were to say like, okay, speed and agility is 5%, whatever it might be, you're going to get the trainers, you're going to get the people to come into the space to make sure your team and your athletes are the quickest, the most, what would the word, agile, would that be the word? Yeah. Like all of that stuff. But when we talk about the mental side, which is what, I mean, I think we can agree, all three of us, our goal is to advocate that to players, to coaches, to families, is like, yes, this is part of the game. And if you want to be the best, you have to pour into that side. And I've reached out to so many AAU coaches, like EYBL coaches specifically, because they are so, I mean, I have my opinions about club basketball. They might come out, I don't know. But
I'm sure it supports you.
Yeah. I mean, I love my experience. It got me to where I'm at, but like it can be, I feel like it is superficial at times for the game itself and for athletes. But they're all about like, okay, we want our girls to get to college. We want our program to be like, oh, we're sending girls to UConn or Louisville or UCLA, whatever it is. It's like, then they go and play games that it's like they're blowing teams out 70-9. And it's like, okay, what is that doing for these athletes? Like, instead of literally, I know one of the girls that I work with, her team, EYBL team, traveled to Houston, not even a viewing tournament, literally played a game, beat the team 70-9 or something like that. And the coach was mad that they allowed the other team to score 9 points. And in like the Houston Sun, in the parking lot of a gym, made them run like lions in the blazing heat. And I'm like, what is this doing for the athletes? Like, instead of that weekend when you're like using all these resources, these girls' time, energy, the parents' money, like, let's have a weekend when we're doing, okay, let's have a good practice, like a training camp type of thing. Bring in these holistic coaches, these mental performance coaches, because if you are really serious about getting these girls to the next level, why wouldn't you be doing or taking the steps that you need to? And it's like, every time I bring up the mental performance aspect, it's like, yeah, like, okay, cool. Like, oh, we love it. But it's like, there's no further engagement with it. And it's like, I'm not even approaching them for money, for nothing. Like, this is, and I know they have the money because they're flying these girls out, but it's solely because it's like, we want these athletes to be prepared. And I don't know, obviously I get activated about that topic.
Great point. And some of it is just a lack of understanding,
Yeah.
lack of awareness, discomfort. I think anytime you change, if anybody has been doing something, we all have habits. If we've been doing certain things, like if you told me all of a sudden, like, I can't take yoga classes, I'm a spaz. Like, what do you mean I can't? Because that's new. I'm so accustomed to, I'm going to go at least a couple times a week. That's just a part of my life. So in 15 years, you magically show up and like, there's this new thing and they're saying that yoga isn't that good for you. I'm like, what? I've been doing this my whole life. Same as some of the coaching styles.
Right.
It's difficult for leaders or humans in general to shift. And what I've tried to do is and you kind of mentioned it, is just being curious. Like, hey, what are the intentions around this approach? What do you think are some areas that maybe we can expand our development? If we can get into the curiosity conversations, and
So
I'm
true.
mindful of not saying you need this, because really they don't have, no one has to do anything. They're
Right.
making money. There's this misconception that because, especially in California, we have so many athletes, just because of sheer numbers, we're going to get enough in college and enough professionally. Not that it's because of the environment. Oftentimes it's despite of the environment players
Right.
are making it. So one, eliciting awareness and education, I think, is the starting point. But it's hard. Like, if some people, if you've only eaten a certain type of food and then someone shows up and they're just like, nah, you got to be vegan. You're like, what?
Yeah.
It does take time, but I do understand that frustration. But I think over time, we're going to slowly uh, impact those individuals that are pretty rigid in those old school styles of leadership.
Right. And I think, to your point as well, of having clinicians who like know what it feels like to be an athlete and then bring in like the clinical side, the evidence-based practices. It's the same for like coaches of, we don't see a lot of former, and again, I'm speaking for like the women's side of basketball because that's what I'm familiar with, but like we don't see a lot of former women basketball players coaching these like EYBL teams to help guide these young women to that spot. So it's also that aspect too of like bringing people in who like actually had that experience, hearing from them, being curious on the coach's standpoint as well of like, okay, what can I do to help these athletes learn from people who have been in that spot?
I
But
got
yeah,
a question for you guys.
yeah.
How do you, if you had to go back to your playing career and you had a coach who played your sport but was also a mental performance coach, but they didn't label the person as the mental performance coach. They were just another coach. And instead of being the defensive coordinator office, it's just like, that's an assistant coach. No players know what the role of each coach is. You're like, they're all coaches. Because, and the reason I asked is because that's kind of been my approach as of recent, is like, look, yes, I am a mental performance consultant. Yes, I do have clients that I work with in this space. Obviously, I do have somewhat of an advantage with almost a decade of coaching in the NBA. But for you guys, do you think the experience would have been different if the mental health clinician was literally just another coach on staff that was around day to day?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why?
You want to go more into that? Absolutely.
We did have Dr. P. He is a mental
Sports psychologist. You probably know him, JD, Dr. Parham.
Oh, yeah.
So he would come in, and when he first started coming in to our team to help us on whatever we needed, we would all be so like nervous, and I don't want to say standoffish, but like we were so opposed to it and we weren't sure of it. I know Haley was excited, but I know for me, I was like, what is this gonna do? Why are we here? Why do we need to talk to him? How is he really going to help us when we're all speaking to him as a team? Like, how can we all be vulnerable in this space when none of us teammates really talk to that level? We're like all little cliques sitting in a circle trying to talk to a sports psychologist. So I definitely think that if he was considered just a coach and it was there day to day, interacting with us like a regular coach would, we would not have had that stance at all.
Because I feel like it was more of a Band-Aid situation.
Like it was like, here, help them.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, our coach is here causing the wound. And then it's like, okay, let's go put a Band-Aid on it once a month or once every 2 months.
As we were losing.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's good to hear that, because that's literally what I kind of talk about with different clinicians, but also I think it's important to, at the same time that we may complain about said thing, it's like, all right, well, what are we doing to actually provide a solution? And for me, knowing that that is a gap and that is an area that our athletes can use a lot of support, it's like, okay, well, if I'm showing up on a staff as blanket assistant coach, but some days my main role, or some teams, the head coach may say, hey, I want your main job to be this mental performance realm. Now, obviously, you have the ability to do tactical and technical things, but I'm kind of looking at it now as I'm just the interpreter. So I understand the sports jargon and the basketball language, but I have rooted mental performance consulting, evidence-based skills that I can work with you on, but I'm not presenting as that title. I'm just a coach. And I really think that can change the way that leaders view it, because if the leaders view it in a way that makes it integrated and collaborative, I think the athletes will feel that. But like to your point, if it's a once in a every blue moon, that's not going to be as efficient.
Right. And I feel like what you're saying to me right now is speaking to what you say in the book of like your energy can impact a room even when you're not in it, and relating that back to like that coaching standpoint of, okay, if I come from this perspective coaching my athletes, how is that going to help them outside of the sport as well? So on that topic, how do you feel like, or do you take that role in coaching now of like, do your bosses come to you and like kind of tell you to lead that way, or is that something that you just do on your own?
Yeah, I think the beauty of, for me, working with head coaches that are very relational is they kind of have a keen eye of being able to recognize strengths of their staff. And so both of the head coaches, both Coach Casey and Coach Ham with the Lakers, one, I was in the middle of my master's program with the Lakers, and he was very aware that that was something of my interest. And so a lot of it is more so just conversation, it's curiosity, it's talking with different assistant coaches about struggles of players that they may be individually assigned to, but being curious about, hey, maybe ask these questions, or hey, I noticed this, just maybe something to keep your eye on. But in terms of that, your energy can be felt in spaces or rooms when you're not there. I can even think about just something as simple as talking with athletes about taking a deep breath and slowing down. And then when you see them months later, after you no longer coach them, they're like, man, I got to take a deep breath, man. And just, so it may start off as a joke or a little annoying to them because it's new, but over time, athletes are brilliant. I think we do not give our athletes enough credit about how brilliant they are as people. Just because they're showing a physical prowess, these athletes are brilliant and they're able to absorb a lot of information. And so it's always fun when you get those moments where you see an athlete after you've worked with them and they're reminding you of something that you were trying to get them to do. Those are always really good indicators. And selfishly, it just feels good to feel like, all right, at least somebody is listening.
Yeah. Can you imagine, Nay, like if when you said that, what comes to mind is when I like had a turnover in practice, and clearly this is a form of trauma, I guess, but in practice one time, I think it was my freshman year, I like had a turnover and I was like, shit. And I said it to myself and my coach yells at me in front of everyone. Also, mind you, I was a freshman. I had 0 playing time. I literally, like, my role was to be the best on the practice squad. and it was just like a little drill. And then she's focused on me and yells at me in front of everyone, makes me do 10 push-ups and then do the drill again. And everything in me just like shut down. I was like, oh my God. First of all, didn't even know I was like being watched because like I felt like I had zero like role on the team at that time, whatever. But when you say that, it makes me think of like, okay, what if a coach were to have been like, Haley, it's okay. Take a deep breath, reset, come back when you're ready. Like the difference in the approach is a full 180. Like that would change the game so much. That would change the way that athletes show up, feel about themselves. And especially in such vulnerable times, like why that was so traumatic for me was because I was already feeling so unsafe and so vulnerable. And then boom, just got like stabbed even more.
To me,
so
the
yeah.
importance of that particular moment is we know that to win games, obviously we can't turn the ball over a lot. So
Right.
a lot of traditional coaches will say, well, I need you to know you can't turn the ball over. But from a holistic standpoint, it's like I can communicate to you that turning the ball over is not something that we want without making you feel belittled as a human being.
Mhm.
We can do both. I can hold you accountable. I can make this a competitive environment. I can make sure that this is a disciplined environment, but I also can be very mindful of the fact that these are human beings that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And one doesn't have to suffer. The
Right.
relational understanding of people doesn't have to drop for performance to rise. Like that's not
Yeah.
something you don't have to pick between one of the two.
Exactly.
I know Haley just went over it, but like in your book, how you talk about your energy can impact a room even when you're not in it. Can you explain a little more on how it leads to your holistic side and kind of your realm on that space?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on that tenet of being mindful as just like what we talk about with holistic coaches. And I think sometimes if we can be mindful as leaders and coaches of the energy that we hold from our personal lives before we walk into a practice facility or to a game, I think that that really will impact how because I vividly remember being a player younger and just thinking like, what's up with like coaches trick? Like, what's going? Like, why are you so? What's the problem? And as an adult, you recognize that life is hard, and I think as starters, we all have to just put on the table the fact that life is difficult. Coach, player, trainer, PT, therapist, I don't care what you do, life is hard. So with that, as coaches, we have to recognize that, all right, as a human, just because I walk into this facility, it doesn't mean that I'm not carrying the fact that maybe a parent is sick, or my child is being bad, or my wife is struggling with health, or whatever it may be. If I can be mindful of that, now I'm able to step into my workspace and engage with the individuals on a day-to-day basis on a level that separates, hey, I'm not actually mad at this person. I'm frustrated that there was a person that was supposed to fix the plumbing and we still got a flood in the basement. That's gonna cost me $25,000. That $25,000 is supposed to go to my daughter's college. Like those are the real struggles. And if we can be mindful of that, I think when we step into those spaces, we have more of an opportunity to not only extract positivity, but also pour positive energy into the different worlds that we're in.
Yeah. This is like flooding my memories of so many things right now. Of like, Nay, remember when the assistant coaches would literally come in first and be like,
And we're like,
you guys better be on it today. Like she's not playing today. Like literally the assistant coaches would, oh yeah.
yes,
My day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, literally. Exactly.
like just
Exactly.
they just need
Like,
It's
eyes.
funny, but it's not.
which is crazy. And then that made us so nervous. Like, then that made us go more internal. And I can speak on it because I had two different coaches at LMU, which I talk about a lot. And like my last year was amazing and just like complete 180 in coaching styles. And Coach A was my coach my last year. And I can just remember like I never felt that way before. Like she was so consistent, which is, it's a lot of work. Like it's a lot to do that for coaches. And this is not me saying like, coaches have to be perfect, whatever. But it is that mindful aspect that you're saying, JD, of like, okay, if you are having a bad day, maybe like even just disclosing that to the team of like you said, like, okay, this happened, I'm feeling a little off today, but like, let's have a good day, whatever it might be. And like Coach A, my senior year coach, she was always so consistent. She was always very real with us, which I really, really loved and appreciated. And it just made it a more like comfortable environment. And oh shoot, there was one other thing I wanted to say. but I forget.
I did with what you're saying. I did want to ask, like, from being on the coach's side and also the athlete side, athletes also carry a lot too, and they have a lot that they bring day to day, whether it's a simple thing as like getting in trouble in class and not passing a test, or and then having to go to practice. So, what is the balance for coaches to understand an athlete's perspective as well, that if their energy is low, something may be happening? And the first thought that I thought of was athletes are humans too, and so are coaches, but um, I totally blanked.
Like how can coaches take that perspective when dealing with athletes as well, of like knowing they might have something else going on?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Yeah, I think it's a constant battle, right? I wouldn't say battle, a constant challenge of trying to figure out what they need. But at the foundation, I think if athletes know you're here to help them, and if we're being honest, there's a lot of benefit to transactional leadership. Like if I can help you your scholarship, if I can help you get more money, NIL, if I can help a professional athlete get a new contract, that's what they want. So I think too often we kind of say that the transactional side is now not. It's like, no, both of these are important. Now, for us both to get our transactional rewards, well, I have to create an environment that allows you to have certain skills and certain performances emerge. You have to be mindful that my coaching style may shift. But I think if there can be a foundation of constant communication, to me, I think that that's the foundation of everything, is that if there can be constant communication where, hey, there's some days where I can identify, one, life is difficult. So I have to anticipate the fact that you're going to show up some days and not feel your best. That doesn't give you an excuse to not give me what you have. If you got 70, give me 70. We always talk about 110%. That's not real. That's not real. Most times, giving 77% is going to be better for you than to have this mindset that if it's not 110, it's not good enough. Because then you give me 20 because you know you don't got 110, as opposed to just give me what you have. But in terms of that balance, I think it's a constant kind of push and pull to figuring out what's needed. I think that's the beauty of, even for me, working with unbelievably talented coaching staffs, because there's multiple people that, okay, let's say I'm the head coach. I may not have the right balance today, but my 3 assistants do. Or the assistant that you work with is having a rough day, but the other 3 assistants are kind of equalizing the playing field from an energy and a support standpoint. And there's days when nobody's on a good energetic level and we have a terrible practice and the vibe is bad, and that's going to happen too. If we can normalize in that there's no linear route to having a particular environment, like it's going to be up and down, and if we can breathe through chaos, let's plug. I think that it allows for the environment to be as positive as possible, but also elicit the results that we want on both ends.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you guys think as two clinicians. I thought, okay, athletes, coaches, they just want to be heard as a human, just want to be heard. So I feel like a lot of times athletes, between the coaches, specifically head coaches and athletes, there's that disconnect because a head coach has to have this standard and they're this like higher up person, and you're so scared to speak that there's no communication. And so, what is your guys' thought process on that in between of letting a head coach or any coach allow the athlete to be heard, but having that space of, okay, we need to still get things done?
You go first.
I feel like my mind goes to college and like student athletes. JD, your mind might go differently, like with NBA and whatnot. But for college, there is that power imbalance. Like the coaches are going to have more power. Obviously now with NIL and money, I have no idea what that looks like, how that feels, because I didn't play in that time. But there is that power difference and also the age difference of this stage of life. Like frontal lobes are not developed yet. Coaches, I would hope that their frontal lobes are developed. Again, and this, I don't want this to sound like ignorant to coaches' struggles or like anything coaches are going through, but there is that added layer of responsibility of coaches having to guide, like you said, JD, and take care of athletes from a different perspective of like, yes, coaches might be having a bad day and things might be happening to them, but they are the adults in the situation. Well, we're all adults, but like they are the more grown people with life experiences that at our age as student athletes in college, we look to them for that support. And I think that they have to realize that and be more aware of that, of like, yes, they might be having a bad day, whatever, but I still need to show up for these kids. Like they are kids in their mind. And just knowing that, like literally like the biological part of it, the physiological part, psychological part, all of those, but biopsychosocial part is like that needs to be taken into consideration when we're coaching these athletes, because again, they're such vulnerable years, and what the impact that coaches have can last. I mean, we're still here talking about the trauma that we experience, knowing that whether it's good or bad, they're going to have an impact on these athletes.
I would say at the foundation, if we can all, and a mentor told me this years ago, if we can show up and seek to understand before seeking to be understood, everything will be so much better. Like, just show up as a player. Let me try to understand, what do my coaches want from me? What are they trying to teach us? What do they want to get out of us? And as a coach, all right, what do our players want? If it's college, they probably want more NIL money. They want to play. They want to potentially get all conference and maybe transfer up or go on to play professionally. Like, all right, so now that I understand what you need, how can we collaborate intentionally and get that done? At the NBA level, for the most part, they want to know that you can help them develop and help them get closer to getting another contract, preferably more money than their last one. Whatever you got to do, if they feel that your environment, now obviously it's going to be push and pull on that, but as a foundation, if we can show up with that mindset and approach, I think that can cut our problems in half, and we'll at least be starting from a closer point to the finish line than we are without having that mindset.
This episode is sponsored by Defend USA, performance and recovery apparel designed for athletes who know that the mental and physical recovery go hand in hand. Defend's graduated compression technology enhances performance by improving circulation, reducing muscle fatigue, and increasing endurance during workouts. Designed for athletes of all levels, it also supports faster recovery by minimizing soreness and promoting better post-training blood flow. Just like we train the mind, we have to take care of the body. And Defend helps you do both. Check them out at dfndusa.com and use code MTR10 for 10% off. Train hard, recover smarter, perform stronger with Defend USA. Absolutely. Okay. The reason why we wanted you to be on the podcast today was because you are coming out with a book called Breathe Thru Chaos. I loved reading through it, seeing your notes, everything that you sent me. It's so amazing, and I can't wait for everyone else to see it. But can you tell us a little bit more about what readers can expect from this and kind of your inspiration behind writing it?
Yeah, so inspiration, I can go back to, let's just say, my high school AAU coach, Ty Lofton. And this is 20 years, 20 years ago. He had us before games doing breathing exercises, visualizing. And this is somebody who's not a clinician, but was intentional about creating an environment that he felt would help maximize our whatever potential. And so with that being the foundation of why I think I was able to myself and my teammates were able to maximize our potential, now I fast forward to being a coach in the NBA and seeing that difference and that gap is mental performance. And what I want this book to be is, the analogy that comes to mind is, if a person has never really exercised and never really eaten healthy, and they read this book, this is your nutrition list and exercises that you can do at home that doesn't cost you a gym membership. It's just like, hey, if you cut out these things, add these areas to your diet, and go through these exercises Monday through Sunday, it costs you, none of these tools cost anything, but there's something that can really impact you long term. That's what I want this book to be, is like that rooted foundation that you can go revisit a month from now, a year from now. But also there's a component to it that's a version of journaling that just allows people to write down. I won't give too much about it, but I want this to not just be necessarily a book, but literally like a guide towards that ultimate peak mental performance.
That's awesome. It's much needed.
Yeah.
And it is something that, again, like we talked about a lot throughout this episode, is like it's the missing piece to a lot of teams or coaching styles or athletes' games. So to have this tool, this resource that they can access on a daily basis is going to be huge. And especially coming from someone like you with such a rich background in sports and experience and life experience, it's just going to be amazing. I can't wait to share it with all the athletes I know.
Appreciate it. And something that we've kind of been talking about from a youth sports standpoint, one thing that we're doing with the book is a percentage of all sales we're placing into youth mental performance resources. Because to your point, there's so many coaches who don't necessarily have the right proper education, or they're just not willing to invest in it. And it's like, okay, if we can set aside resources to just go into these spaces and say, look, this is what we feel can really help your athletes. We want to integrate this in different innovative ways. That's super important to me because, again, we've all been in those shoes as a young athlete, feeling that, man, I know this environment is not how sport is supposed to be. And with the youth burnout rates rising drastically every year, I just feel it's extremely important that obviously the book is an amazing tool as well. But for me and for us with holistic coaches, it's like, all right, how do we also engage in community and attachment to this amazing guide?
Yeah, that is awesome.
So last question, what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Piece of advice. You know, it's funny. What comes to mind when I hear that? One of my mentors, Vic, who's younger than me, but he's a mentor because of his brilliance, recommended a book called Still Like an Artist. If you haven't read it, I think it would be a great one to read. And in that book, it talks about all of the advice that we give to other people is simply things that we wish we could tell our younger self. And for me, this book is literally all of the things that I would tell my younger self to either continue doing or adding, whether it's psychological reframe. All right, there's certain situations that are in front of you. You can interpret them one way or the other. If you can reframe them to be more positively and things that you can have action items attached to, that's going to be better for you. All right, consistently visualizing. There's power in being able to see exactly what you want to do, exactly the environment that you're in, whether it's return to play from an injury or just simply on a day-to-day level. Breath work, like the power of being able to literally just be mindful and present pays dividends. And I know for anybody who lives in LA who's always in traffic, I like to say the stoplight or bumper to bumper traffic is the best time to get 5 seconds, 20 seconds of breath work. Stoplight, soon as you get there, just taking 3 up, 3 down is one of the breathing exercises that I have in the book. You may not have time to go to a yoga class or to a meditation garden or all of the things that are now on social media, but we're all at a stoplight. If you're in LA, you're in bumper to bumper traffic at least once a day. So being able to integrate these things in capacities that don't cost any extra money. Like once you get these tools, you can integrate them on a day-to-day basis and they're timeless. It's not like, oh, I start doing this and then it no longer is something that I can utilize. And so the advice I would give, honestly, most of it I put into the book, but to answer your question without just talking about the book, I would say continuing to be present. I think that was kind of my medicine for getting through very difficult times was my trained ability to be present, whether that's mindfulness, yoga, breath work. And as I look back and I think about, dang, I can list a bunch of crazy stuff that happens and I wonder like, how was I able to get through them, whether it was from a performance standpoint or personal. I think that trained ability to just be where my feet are is something that I will continue to encourage my younger self and anybody else that's navigating this difficult life of ours.
Yeah, it's perfect advice. I love it. Well, thank you so much, JD, for your time in the mental training room today. And when can we expect the book to come out? Do you have a release date?
Yeah, so release date is August 18th. It's actually my mom's birthday, who passed away a few years ago. And I really wanted to connect the release date. One, it's my first book, but she was a super creative, somebody who I feel like got the writing knack for. She was always writing poetry and poems and scripts and all of the things in between. But I don't feel she was able to share her brilliance with the world. And so for me, especially my first one, it's like I want to, one, celebrate her and her gift to the world, but also with it being my first book of making sure that there's like a meaningful connection. So yeah, August 18th,
I love that.
ThruChaos.com. You can purchase.
We can't wait.
Order now. You can pre-order now though.
Yes, pre-order it.
Pre-order.
Get your book. Well, thank you so much, JD.
That's it for today in the mental training room.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at mtr.pod to stay up to date with all things mental training.